the psych or the therapist aspect, the other side of that. I think a psychologist and especially a psychologist, we're really trained to kind of evaluate and diagnose and really dig into exploring feelings, right? So as Cindy was talking about, like how emotional regulation is really like, if you feel good, you can do good kind of idea. Um, for us, it's really about getting distress levels and regulation levels steady so that we can access higher order types of things like skill building and learning and reflection and all that good stuff. So, a lot of times I see my role to be very coach related in the sense that I'm building skills, um, as that's kind of like a foundation of the work that I do. But I also get to really dig and explore feelings and what feelings mean and where they're coming from and how they might be interacting with someone's performance, or just their well being, overall well being in life.
Great. Um,
And I think to add on to that and just elaborate a little bit more, just even the biology of what's happening and how impossible it is to really click into the executive function area of the brain, which is up in this place, your prefrontal, and how if there's stress of any kind, um, and it is being taken care of way back here, and it's prioritized because the body believes it's fighting to survive. Like every breakup is a tiger in the room, every test that's freaking you out is a tiger in the room. And it's definitely important to pay attention to a tiger and all the stress that's happening with that prior to the brain saying, it's okay. You can now start being very practical and step by step oriented. And so I think what we realized was just the futility of trying to step into how do we use a planner, for instance? How do you access a syllabus, for instance? When a sweet kid just is dealing with massive issues around a relationship, or they don't even have to be massive. They can be small issues around oh my goodness, so many things. A little bit of roommate drama, a little bit of adjustment that's happening, which is a big adjustment into the college setting. So just realizing that biologically, a student cannot engage in skills that are already difficult for an ADHD brain if they're living in a high stress zone that's caused by whatever reason might be present, whether that be academic, emotionally, like relationally based. And I'm just really starting to gather data from real life coaching that's proving what is biologically true, right? So um, I believed it before, uh, just up in here in my brain, but now it's like, oh boy, wow. And starting to see the results when a student can get emotionally regulated better by addressing, like Gwen said, the emotional aspect and where those emotions are coming from and how to process them better. And then when they come to us, they've been in a much more stable spot that allows us to make a little bit more movement into some of the real practical nuts and bolts of like how to engage successfully in college material. Yeah.
yeah, all great points. You have to get there emotionally before you can access the other parts of your brain needed to do some of those higher level tasks. And that, as a former therapist and a college admissions consultant, I find that it's so important for families to manage any anxiety they have about the process in order to then kind of take the practical steps. So there's a lot of great questions coming in about college readiness. But before we get to those, we've talked about the roles of coach and therapist. What about the parents' role? Where do they fit into the team?
Yeah.
So do you want to take that? I mean, I'm happy to.
You want to
I mean,
kick
I
it and
think,
then I'll follow
Yeah,
you
yeah,
this time?
yeah.
Okay.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. I think it's like, inevitably, if we're thinking about parents, in the role of supporting students to college, through college, I think it's important to kind of be in a certain mindset, which is what kind of agent, like, are you wanting to promote agency and independence in that student. And that starts way before that senior year or way before that freshman year in college, right? Which, I think it really touches upon some of the questions that are being asked here in the chat. How do we know about college readiness? What are we looking for when we're assessing for college readiness, et cetera? I like to look at parents and kids as having a horizontal relationship versus a vertical one. And when we look at horizontal relationships, what I mean by that is that, there's an outcome that we're looking for, and we want to say, what is the kid responsible for? What is the student responsible for? What's the parent responsible for? So, for example, if we're needing to study for a test or break down a larger project to complete, right? What is the parent's responsibility or role in that task, right? So, when I'm working with parents, and inevitably I am because parents are one, really experts with their kids and who their kids are and what they need. But the other is that they're in a prime position to be there and supporting and influencing pretty consistently and constantly. So to be able to define, wow, what is a support? Asking your student, what is the support that you need in order to be successful? What are your personal goals? What would you like to do? What kind of support do you want from me? I think those really set a student up nicely for being able to be on their own, because for many, going to college will be the first time that they're on their own for a significant period of time. So for me, I'm really looking for lots of daily living skills that are really automated before they go to college. I'm looking for good, solid, at least emotional regulation skills. I know what I need. I know when to ask for help. I know who to ask for help from. I've got some ideas of how to manage my stress and kind of stay regulated and what works best for me. How do I thrive? And really identifying those supports before they go to college would be just some of the things out of the gate. But parents' role would be specifically defined in my mind horizontally, collaboratively with the student.
I really like that idea rather than presuming what your role should be and kind of jumping in. And, I'm a parent too, so I know how easy it is to kind of just step right in and assume what your role should be, to have that dialogue about what it should be. And I would say in addition that this could be a moving target. This is something
Oh,
that can
yeah.
evolve over time. The same goes to college readiness, which we're going to get to those questions about, how do you identify college readiness? That's something that is going to evolve over time. And a key piece of it is that student kind of stepping into their own, that kind of coming to the fore, being able to be more responsible and have the parent be more of a backstop. But that's something that evolves over time.
Yeah.
Cindy, do you want to talk about how you see the parent playing a role on the team? We've talked about kind of where the therapist fits in, where the coach fits in. Parents are
Yeah.
probably wondering, what should I be doing then?
Yeah. Way too many things to say about this. So I'm trying to organize my thoughts around this. Is a very big passion point for me, I think. I think, as Gwen was talking, uh, it's really interesting what happens when students come to us. They're already at college or transitioning very soon to college, right, as freshmen. And so we get them after that point of release, right? And then we have a very distinct phase of parenting and what it looks like from afar, because they're usually not living in the same home as their parents anymore when they're with us. So, in our discussion, we met and prepped for this together. And I think one of the things that struck me most about that is we were talking about this old teacher adage, which is I do, we do, you do, and having that be a flow of learning how to do a task that someone doesn't know how to do. For instance, calling a doctor, right? Which most of you on this call, if you have neurodivergent students, are likely on some form of meds or have been or might be in the future, but medical care, counseling care, care in the therapeutic medical system is a part of the world, right? And so what would I do, we do, you do look like as a flow? Because what we had talked about was often it's I do, I do, I do, you do, right? And so what does a functional we do look like? And when I left that conversation together as a mom who's immersed with a 17-year-old senior and having to figure out how to do we do with someone who is their main psychological developmental role right now is to develop some autonomy and be done with me, right? It's a beautiful, terrible thing. And so, how do we do things together so that I'm enabling her to do it on her own in a you do fashion? And that is a humbling, intricate dance. I just really want to acknowledge, especially in light of neurodivergent students that have really desperately needed you as an advocate for their entire life, right? So, learning how to not be needed as a parent is pivotal. And it is so tricky. And if I even thought for a minute I could tell you exactly how to do that, I would be very wrong. Right. So I think everybody's journey through that and the appropriate moments of when and how to let go are so nuanced. Right. And so I believe it was you, Eric, who was, or it might have been Gwen, or both of you together saying it's really important to be asking the student what they want and don't want from you. Like, what are the spots, kiddo of mine, emerging adult of mine, where I'm driving you berserk because you think you've got it and you want me to back off? Because let's try that. I'm willing to try that. I might be really nervous and angsty about this, but I want you to pick one spot where I'm in your business and you want me to let go. Like, can you have that float above it conversation with your child? And I have a hard time with child. Emerging adults, too much to say. Child's too little, but you get what I'm saying. Your offspring. And how can you respect their wishes, give them a small chance to fail so that you can recircle back? So just real practically speaking around the doctor thing, because I think it helps to get some nuts and bolts about what we do looks like. We've had a lot of doctor appointments in my family in the last 2 years. And, what does it look like for me to be like, okay, I need you to call. You're the one who wants to cancel your appointment because you have an AP calc exam or whatever it is. And she's like, no, 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 you call. I don't have time. I don't have time. I gotta go. And I'm like, so here's the thing. What do you think you would need to say if you make that call? And we gather 1 or 2 points. And I say, I'm going to text you the number right now. You have 5 minutes to go before you leave. And I just want you, it's real simple. I just want you to, those 2 things you just mentioned, that's all you need to say. Right. And so giving them some very practicals, dealing with their angst of, I don't want to, I don't want to, want to, you do it. You've done this my whole life. I don't want to take that step in whatever it is, and gently figuring out a script for them, some sort of scaffolded experience where you're not just going, I do, you do. Right. So, like, how can you make it an instructable moment that doesn't cause more conflict? Right. That's where it gets tricky. Because will they
Well,
let you teach them?
yeah, I'm glad you gave that example because you were talking earlier about, the child feeling like you're in their business, but the child may not be pushing you away. The child may be happy to have you make all the appointments for them and may not be saying, hey, I can do this myself. I mean, sometimes they are, one of my kids is super independent, the other less so. But it is, there are times when, as a parent, you need to be saying, okay, when you go off to college or, you work with college students, now that you're in college, you got to start putting some of this on your plate. You have to have those conversations for how to make that happen because your child may or may not be clamoring to say, hey, I can make all my own appointments from now on.
Mhm. I mean,
Uh,
I've sat with students who literally edged on the brink of panic, of calling. One of them in particular was he needed to call the mechanic. He knew all the stuff that maybe you would wonder if he would know about what to say to fix the car. He knew all that. But making the phone call, there was shaking, there was red face, there was all kinds of anxiety around that. And we came up with the script, and he had it right in front of him and was able to follow through and was so proud of himself afterwards. And the next time it was 20 million times easier, but the resistance to it and the I can't, and like, ugh, like being able to hold their I can't anxiety as a parent, just softly insist.
And of
And
course, if
then
your
maybe
part,
sometimes don't insist because maybe they're not ready. So this is where I mean, like,
yeah,
it's pretty,
it's a
um,
dance. But if you're
it's a
partnering with
dance.
a therapist, they can help with the anxiety.
Yeah.
So the questions are starting to pile up. I want to start getting to them. But before I do, Gwen, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of the dance. I think this is so dependent on people's relationships they have with their child. And I mean, I hear parents say like the way I would do this with my son is different than I would do this with my daughter or my younger daughter or my older daughter. So I think start with the end in mind. What kind of outcome are you hoping to get, and how do you choose to be effective over being right? And I think that's another thing that happens when I'm supporting parents, which is no, this is the right thing to do. This is the way it needs to be done versus actually with my kiddo or in this particular situation, I've got to approach it this way if I want to be effective. And so being effective, I think is a, a healthier mindset than like, I just got to do what's right. So I would add that, and that not every moment needs to be a teachable moment, is the other thing I would add.
Yeah. Not everybody may be familiar with the principles of DBT or dialectical behavior therapy. I assume that's you were alluding to it being effective. There's some great principles there, and that's one of them. Think
Yeah.
about what's effective interpersonally, not just I have the right to say this because this person had no right to do this to me, but is it going to be effective to say it the way you feel like saying it or to interact the way you feel like? Well said.
One last maybe simple thing with this is moving from, and this is exactly, I think, what you're saying, Gwen, but with slightly different language of the horizontal and vertical. The difference between being a parent that's a manager of your child versus a parent that's a consultant. And the manager would be the top down, and the consultant would be the side by side, right? And using consultation language instead of boss language, right? Like, do your sentences have more question marks in them than they do exclamation points and periods when you're talking to your kid about how to do things, right? Can you say things like, what do you think you should do? Or it's up to you. What do you think? Like, can you bring that it's up to you into your sentence structure with your kids more often? And then let their sweet brains begin to have that moment of, it is up to me. What would I, me, not my mom, dad, do about this? Right. So having that moment, those beginning moments of what would I do? They need practice at having that thought pattern. Right. So, yeah.
Lots of great questions. And Maria said, I love consultation language, listening first and asking second. It's that well-known concept of seek first to understand. Uh, and we all have clinical backgrounds, so that really helps too, being a professional listener. Lots of great questions here. I don't know if the two of you have been looking at them. Are there any that you want to jump on? Two of the first ones were similar. So Melissa asked, what skills do you look for when assessing if a student is ready for college/independent living? Elise asked, what can we do now to prepare our children to be college ready? And how do we assess if they are there? I know, Cindy, you're primarily working with students once they're in college. I'm sure you both have thoughts on it. I could spend the whole session talking about it.
Yeah.
One of the things, we look for is, well, we look for self-awareness. Do you know when you need help? Do you know when you're struggling? Are you aware when you're running into issues academically, emotionally, socially, in terms of, self-care? And do you have the self-advocacy to ask for help and
That's it.
access help when you need it? So it's not that you have to have everything figured out. You have to have all the skills. You have to have all the social skills or emotional or academic skills. Um, Kids arrive at college with a range of abilities and maybe different levels of abilities in different spheres. But if you realize, hey, I am falling behind here, or I'm getting depressed, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm having trouble structuring my time, then you can potentially take the step of saying to your parent, maybe we do need a coach after all. Maybe I do need to access the academic coaching service at school or the mental health service if it's an emotional one. But I'll let the two of you weigh in on this question too, which is again is what skills do you look for assessing if a student is ready, and lost the other question, the version of it, but both assessing if the student's ready and helping prepare the child to be college ready. Well, I think we've talked about helping prepare the child in terms of that. I do, we do, you do, but go on. Oh, who wants to
I mean, I'm
jump
going to
in?
bump off of something you said, Eric, which is, well, self-awareness is the heart of being able to have efficacy, right? Efficacy meaning I believe that I have the ability to impact my life in a positive way, which is then the heart of confidence, right? So, uh, I would say self-awareness for sure. And I'll take, Eric, your recommendation one step further, which is not only do you need to know when you need help, you need to know who to ask for it and how to ask for it. So that's the advocacy piece. But the other is does your child actually use the help? So I see students sometimes fall short of that piece, right? I've gotten help, but now I don't use the help. I don't actually implement the things that I have gotten from that person. So that usually tells me that maybe we need another layer of support in order to execute. And that's very, very common, I think, with students with ADHD, or any type of executive functioning kinds of challenges. And so for students like that, execution is like, I think, a big piece. The other things that I'm going to be looking for are, can they take care of their bodies? Like, can they feed themselves? Can they take their medications on time? Can they get themselves up in the morning? Can they get on, can they get up and get going? Those are some of the things I would say. Transportation and money would be the other two big arms of moving away to college. The other is like, I want to make sure that students are academically ready for a collegiate environment. And so, how much support do they need academically? Is the other. And if they needed a lot of support academically, so maybe they can understand what they're doing, but they need help in tracking and executing and completing and turning in, you probably want to get them some kind of support so that that transition is really smooth. I think there's a question that was like really cute, or a statement. And it was like, I've recommended that my daughter or someone get a coach. But she says, I'm just going to wait till I go to college. That if I demand or if I insist that she gets one, is that really horizontal, right? And I think it's like in this way, it's being able to empower your child to make some of those decisions, because the reality is you're going to need to trust in their judgment when they're away from you. And I'm hoping that you were able to do that before they left, that you had a relationship with them in a way where you're like observing them making good decisions, observing their judgment. Yes, of course, with mistakes. But where, like, wow, they know when to ask for help, or at what, maybe with, I don't know who this is. If I go back up for the coach, Jamie, yeah. So, that idea of, okay, you know what? Come at it from your perspective. Babe, like, this makes me super nervous. Like, me as your mom, I'm anxious about this. And when I'm anxious about something, the way I deal with my anxiety is I do, right? Like, that's what I do in this situation. And so appease your dear old mother and tell me, at what point in time will you enact a coach? Like, just help me understand, what is the flag for you where you will say, I need help, right? So that could even be helpful. And I think all of those conversations and those questions really help to draw attention to and clarify specific things. The other thing with ADHD and even just this age group is that they need to be asked certain questions. This is, I think, the benefit of not just a therapist, but also a coach, to ask questions that help draw insight or help make connections. That's what our job is a lot of times, right? Um, so, how do we help one direct attention for an ADHD kiddo who is really not necessarily paying attention to some of these things? Um, my other suggestion, practical suggestion here would be if you were curious about what kinds of supports your student might need after they leave you and go to college, I would take a blank piece of paper, and I call this a support audit. I would just sit down and I would write down everything you do for your kid from wake to sleep. That will give you a good idea
I was
of
going to say the same thing.
that will give you a really good idea, practical idea of what supports they need and where, if they're still in high school, um, kids with ADHD need a longer runway to learn things. Start early with that. Knock things off your list, transfer responsibility back to your kid in some of those things that you're doing for them. And for the things that just need a lot of support still, try to get that set up before they go.
Yeah. And I think when we had, I loved that activity when you had shared it with us before, Gwen. And Eric, if you remember, you had piped in and said there's a lot of things that parents may not realize should go on that list that they're actually doing for their kids because it just comes so naturally.
Hmm.
So if there's a moment of emotional dysregulation, you see your kid starting to do a thing and you step in and move the situation around just a little bit. You bring the cat in and put him in their lap because you know, like when they start petting the cat, it settles. Like just that's even a kind of an obvious one, but like how are you manipulating situations to where they don't have to deal with their negative emotions because you've rearranged the circumstances? That goes on the list, y'all. And those are very nuancy, like you're so good at it, you don't even know you're doing it, right? So I think not just making breakfast, not just putting the pill by the door, by their keys, by their water bottle so they can't miss it, right? But just how are you helping them have an easier time to not be so stressed out? And how you going to do that when they're far, far away, right? So I think I love that exercise and to just be careful of the hidden ways you do the things you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. There's so many things that we as parents do over the course of the day, and sure, some of them might be obvious, like waking your kid up in the morning, and some of them might be more subtle, as you say, Cindy. And it's not that you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be helping your child regulate, but thinking together as a team, okay, so what's going to happen when you're in college and I'm not there to bring the cat or dog in or give you a hug or what have you. And of course, sure, your kid can text you and so on, but um, do they need other people on their team like a therapist? Do they need how to know how to go to the counseling center at college if things start to go off the rails and so on? And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Gwen, about not just having the skills or having the self-awareness, but knowing where to get help. And a lot of that happens in college when you have the orientation. When you start college, they tell you all the great services, but you, the student, might be tuning that out, thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to need the career center until I'm a senior, and I don't need the counseling center. I'm fine." And kind of like not even paying too much attention to that. But it kind of goes back to the whole discussion about a coach too, saying, well, I'll hire one if I need one. Well, that's not just a yes or no. That's a more nuanced conversation, I think, about how will you know when you need one,
Mhm.
and what would those indicators be?
Right. And I love that specificity. And I think even as you came up with that list of everything you do, it could be a really interesting exercise to be like, I did a really interesting thing today. I just wanted to kind of gauge how many things I'm doing as you're preparing to get the heck out of here and do your own thing. Like, here's my list of what I did today for you. And I'm curious which one of these would be something you'd be ready to more consistently take on your own. Like, can you fire me? I'd love to quit. I'd love for you to fire me in one or two ways. So like, let's can I get fired? Bring it on, right? I think just having a playful attitude, not a shame based, like, look at all this I do for you. How are you ever going to go to college? Like, that's not the tone. But just, or even just like, yeah, no indication of look at what I do as if it's a burden, but like, I'm curious. So I did this, and I am curious now how I can stop doing some bits and pieces of this. The only other thing I would say with like assessing readiness is with us, it is not so much the problem is not so much where is the counseling office and how do you do it. That is a problem, but it starts with this underlying thing of two things. One, so many of our ADHD students are one of two things. They're overly optimistic about how college is going to be different, so everything will be better. I won't have to do all these boring, dumb classes with these people that drive me crazy. I'm going to have a whole new life and it's going to be great. And that even happens with us every quarter or semester. Our students start, they're like, it's going to be great. I got this, this is going to happen because the ideas and the dreaming is like really easy to have a plan. But it is the executive function skills and the details and the grind and the boring and the details where they get caught up. Right. So, one, they're usually overly optimistic because optimism is in the ideal realm, not the get it done, right? And then the other, but like kind of the absolute opposite of that is um, there's so much shame around asking for help because they think because of their ADHD, they need help. So it's out of a discrepancy that they need it, and that they've lived their whole life feeling like everything was harder for them, that their friends got things faster, that they got in more trouble, that they, it can be a burden filled experience growing up with ADHD. And to ask for help is to admit I need it, which taps into a shame based reaction. Right. And I think realizing that, in fact, the most successful students at college are the valedictorians who aced high school that are willing to ask for help. And they need it too, right? Like it's not because of these things that are a struggle for you that you need to advocate for yourself. It's that everyone here is in a new scenario, learning new things, which means everyone here needs to ask for help, right? You're not the only one because of this thing that you've had to live with your whole life, right? So I think the shame and then the overly self confident are two themes we run into with our students pretty frequently.
And that never goes away. That's not just a college phenomenon. When you start that first job after college and you're new in the workplace, there's going to be a whole lot of things you don't know that you need to ask, and you can't get better at your job if you don't ask questions. If you're like, oh, I don't want to seem stupid, so I'm not going to ask, well, you just won't be as good at your job. You want to succeed in life, you've got to be able to use the collective wisdom of all the people around you. That's why I have you two on the panel. I want to read the couple of comments here because they're so interesting and useful. Jamie had said, I suggested my daughter get a coach before starting college in the fall. She prefers to wait and see if she needs one. Doesn't sound very horizontal of me to demand it. LOL. Thoughts? And then here it is. Jenny said, Jamie, I approached this by asking my son if he would be willing to look online at what an ADHD coach does. He agreed. Then the next step was to ask if he was open to a meeting/phone call where he could ask a coach questions about the program. He agreed. After that, he decided it would be helpful and was willing to go forward.
Yeah. The number of students that come into free consultations with me looking like this, various forms are like half on the screen. They're like this, indicating their reluctance. They show me reluctance in all kinds of body language, and it's pretty fun to watch. And I get it, right? But, I think if you can ask them to say no, I'm inviting you to say no after you have something to say no to. right? Like you're saying no to this thing you don't know what it is yet. So like, can we find out what it is and then you say no? Like have an educated no for me. Because your no right now is just based on like hand up, get away, right? Or back off. Um, and so it could be helpful. Can you just have that much curiosity with me? And so, um, and when I meet with students, my biggest number one thing I say right off the bat to the parent and the student, because they're both present, is um, this cannot be an arm twisted decision. You are beginning to start making decisions for yourself. And this is one of the first big ones I'm asking you to make. And I do not want you to do coaching if you don't want to. Please don't. And I'm like looking and, trying to be very with my eyes at them because it will not be helpful to you unless you believe it might be helpful to you. If it's just your mom getting nervous, because I'm a mom too, we get nervous. When we get nervous, we find solutions. Just like Gwen was saying, when I get nervous, I do. Right. So when I get nervous, I do. That's normal for a parent. And so your mom's nervous. She really wants to find a solution to this problem. This doesn't have to be the solution, right? So just freeing them to make that decision really sets a whole different tone. The arms come down. I mean, like literally, I can watch them get back into their, I'm a human that is growing some autonomy, that has a chance to engage with this or not. At the end, I remind the parent, please, oh, please don't arm twist. Have a discussion, but please don't twist their arm. Because the end could be that you make them do this or you give them an ultimatum. It's coaching or therapy, one or the other. You got to do it. And this is what I would caution about this talk: is it could be none. Your child could choose none. And you know um that needs to be a choice that you allow them to make, in my opinion. I just don't think if you force it that it's going to have a chance of a decent beginning.
I think the same is true for therapy. When you're a therapist, you
100%.
dread those clients who come in because somebody else in their life told them they had to get therapy, whether it was their partner, their parent, their employer. And you ask someone, so how can I help you? And they're like, well, my mom told me I had to go to therapy, so ask her why I'm here. That's not a conversation you want to have.
I know. And then I think, you know what, if it comes to that and they're not going to get the help and you're sending them off and you're spending a crap ton of money, that's a hard scenario. There's all kinds of interesting opinions about what kind of boundaries and borders and check-ins and that kind of thing. But I would say, first off, as a parent, get some therapy or a really good friend and process your own anxiety about it before you dump it back on your kid, because that won't go well and you probably will be anxious, and it's so rightfully so. So, can you find a process place so that you don't work it out on your kid? Can you have some stillness and frame of mind when you approach your student about your nervousness about them going away, right? So they
And it,
can't carry it for you and they will sense every little fiber. They've got big antennas for you not believing in them or being anxious about what you're anxious about. Yeah.
you said rightfully so. I think that's a key phrase because as a parent, you might be thinking, well, I know my kid. I've known my kid their whole life. I know they're not going to succeed in college if they don't have a therapist, if they don't have a coach, if they don't use the writing center or, whatever it might be, sign up for the support program. And that anxiety, I don't want my kid to fail, so I'm going to force them to do this. That anxiety is, even though it's rightfully so, even though you may be correct that they are going to struggle hugely without those supports. That anxiety could derail the process of the conversation, so that the conversation's not a constructive one. There's a lot of other questions I'd like to get to, but before we go on, Gwen, is there anything you want to jump in with on any of this?
No, I mean I'm just nodding away. I mean, I'll just reiterate that in my practice I won't take a student or a young adult who's not there on their own choice. just because I know how damaging that can be. I'm going to say it's not only counterproductive, it's potentially damaging. So it's not advisable. So I'll echo that of my colleagues.
There's a question from Gala. Speaking of that readiness, knowing when to take meds, calling doc, making beds without having a parent remind them, etc. What do you think of pre-college programs? Um, I would just say briefly, I don't know how much the two of you want to weigh in on that. I think they can be somewhat diagnostic. It's a these pre-college programs, this would be typically a summer program, 1 to 3 weeks, while the student's still in high school, often at a college campus where they take a course or two, or it might be a college readiness program specifically for students with learning differences. Lots of our kids go to these programs. Number one, they may learn some skills, so it may help jumpstart that process and get them move the needle a little bit so they're a little more college ready, but also will help uncover what the challenges are going to be. So before you as a parent plunked in down tens of thousands of dollars in tuition for that first semester or first year, um, they go away for a couple weeks, and if it's a disaster, then maybe they're not ready to go away for a year. Maybe you need to scale that back and have them take a gap year or think about a different plan. But curious whether either of you wants to weigh in on this too.
I
Yeah.
think there's a place for these programs. Again, I would encourage parents to think about what it is that they want to come out of a program like that. Like what are you hoping your child gets from that program? And then being really sure, because in my mind, those pre-college programs are really still working on living skills. They are really more focused on functional aspects of life versus academic aspects of life. Even though there's some of that piece because executive functioning skills kind of are touch everything we do, right? So. But the idea there is, why? Like, why are you wanting and what are you hoping comes out of attendance to a pre-college program, and to make sure that that's actually what you might get out of that. Um, but I definitely think they have a place. And what does your kid think about a pre-college program? I mean, like, what do they want to go to a pre-college program? Do they need to go to one? What is their opinion on that? And hopefully you're able to have that conversation of going to a little bit of a boot camp, I guess, if you will, like before college. But I'm all for skill building. I mean, skill building is really the heart of well-being. So if they can learn some skills that they need that are going to make them more successful in the collegiate environment, that's great. Again, I love for the living skills to be as routinized as possible because then they can focus on the really big demands and the different changes and the increase exponentially of demands that they're going to meet in a college setting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. A lot of our students want to go to these programs.
Hmm.
They sound fun and they want to go off to college, so they're happy to kind of get a head start and get away for a few weeks before college starts.
Yep.
Make new friends and so on. So it's not necessarily a battle. Um, Anything you want to say, Cindy, before we go on to the next
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I do because we've put a lot of thought into designing a summer starting strong program and some of the things that we've come against. I think there can be excitement about it, especially if it's like a go away and do it. Oh, heck yeah, that's fun, right? But especially too, if it's at the college that they're heading to and it's specific and around that particular college, so that they're gathering those details about that school in that place. So it's all directly applicable, right? That's a really nice college prep scene. Um, for us, I would be careful of programs that are just like, this is college prep for everyone, right? And like for us, we're working one-on-one with the student. We have a list of 17, 16. I don't know, a big list of things that has lists within lists, really, but of things that they need to be able to do. And then we ask the parent and the student to both take a look at those and feel out like, what do you feel like you can handle together to get ready? And what are the things you're like, oh, because a lot of students don't know what they don't know about college entry. Like, they think initially, well, everybody just does it and you just do it. You just do it. You're ready, right? And they don't know that there's some real practical, like somewhat easy things to take care of before you go, right? So I think getting a what they actually need done together, like that's kind of so asking programs, how do you personalize this towards the needs of my specific kid and where their development is and where it is not, right? I mean, there's programs that'll do everything from like, how do you make friends at school? What does that look like? That living skill, and how do you connect, and and they foster those experiences. Focus Collegiate is one that is super intentional, very intense. They go to Boston. It's not at the school they're going to go to unless they go to Simmons or something in
Yes,
Boston.
Simmons.
But they do all the things. It costs a lot of money, but like, how much does it cost for your kid to drop out of school?
And how
And
much does it
so
cost
not just
emotionally?
financially, but
Hmm. Yeah,
emotionally. That's the one I'm most concerned about. Financial is painful. Emotional damage from failure at going to at school is immense. It is an incredibly painful process for a student to go to school and fail out, especially when their peers are continuing on without them. And so I just can't stress enough, be careful sending your kid to school.
that's
Um,
part of why I became a consultant. As a therapist, I saw kids who went off to college and
yeah,
didn't make it through the first year. And I saw how devastating it was. And I realized if they become college ready while they're in high school, if they go to a college that gives them the support they need, that doesn't have to happen.
yeah, yeah.
There's a great comment in the chat from Gabrielle. It's a big shift to go to from high school, where teachers often remind them and accept things late, to college, where they are now truly independent students without parent slash teacher prompts. The accepting things late is a good point. It's a little throwaway comment there, but some of our kids who are on 504 plans and IEPs in high school have an accommodation that they can have extended deadlines and that they can take longer to get assignments done. That pretty much disappears in college. So families may think, oh, well, I'm going to get accommodations in college too. Yes, you can, but that's not a common one in college the way it is in high school. So that's an issue right there. But without the parent teacher prompts, as we talked about earlier, there's so many prompts you do as a parent and prompts you don't even see that are happening at school, with the teachers saying, remember, there's a quiz tomorrow. Remember your paper's due on Monday. Those kind of reminders and prompts, or maybe it's a one-on-one prompt of saying like, hey, you didn't turn your paper in. I'll give you another day to finish it. That stuff also kind of goes away in college. The students get the syllabus at the beginning of the term, and it is up to you, the student, to remember to do the reading, to turn the assignments in, to study for the tests. So big, big shift.
And there's so much sparkly fun stuff at college. Oh my goodness. There's so many things to say yes to instead of English 101.
Yeah, including things parents
So
don't want to
many
know
fun
about.
things. Yeah. And so figuring out ways to say, I'm going to do the hard thing and say no to the fun thing, that honestly feels like a miracle to me when it occurs. Because they have to have a strong enough why to do the hard thing. If your kid is going off to school and they don't know what they want to do, they have no like interests, like that's okay, but also and they're saying yes to the fun thing is going to happen way more often, way more easily. It makes sense that it would. They don't have a pull towards a why. Why am I here? What am I going to do with this? Why does it matter to me? And if that is non-existent for them, the yes to fun will happen significantly more often, right? And throw some ADHD in there, and then like their interest based brain is going to go where they're interested. Well, if they're not interested in anything academic that they're looking at, they will pivot away from it. That's not a character flaw, it's the design of their brain. They will go to what's interesting. And so, yeah, just really be thinking about that as they go. They will get passionate and interested in something. It may not be at age 18. It might not be then. It might be several years down the road working at McDonald's and they begin to hate that life and they're like, I gotta do something else. And then they are much more determined to figure out their why, right? So, but the lack of why, the draw to interest-based activities, and then them failing at the academics and what happens to their self-esteem after that is a big, long, hard road. And it can cause esteem damage that takes a while to recover from. So
We only have a couple minutes left, and both Julie and Jamie want to know, how do you support the students you're working with when they get to college? This could be true. This could apply to both of you. So let either of you jump in on that. And Jamie said, same question. Really want to hear more about what coaching looks like week to week.
Cindy, why don't you take this, since I think, that like this is a question really geared towards your support.
yeah, that's the work. Okay, so I think the first thing we're doing is we are building a foundation of trust with our students. So ideally, we're connecting with them before school starts, maybe a week or 2 or 5 weeks if we're doing a whole support program. But it's really about, who are you? Like we we're you'll hear terms like strength-based coaching, and you really need to ask what the heck that person means when they say it, because what it looks like on the ground versus this floaty sweet concept is like what do you actually do to elicit the memory that I have strengths? Oh yeah, I forgot because I have so many things that are hard. So it's a lot of taking our fishing pole out and helping them remember what they're good at, and maybe doing some values assessment of what is important to you, so that we have that foundation to stand on. So we start there. My very first conversation when a free consult is, guess what? I don't want to know why you're here. I want to know what you're good at. Let's go. And by the way, your mom's sitting next to you, and anything you forget, she's going to get to say. So, like, you might as well just brag about yourself, right? We have a playful tone, but that's the beginning. What are you good at? And then from there, school starts real quick. So we move more into like proactive coaching versus triage coaching is a differentiation we make. Proactive is like, who are you? What are your strengths? What's your why? What do you want to do? That's more floaty, I call it. And then triage is, you just got 4 syllabus dumped in your lap. They have 17 assignments each on them, and one of them is due in 2 weeks, and it's big. What are we going to do? Right? So then we're using calendars. We help them try and determine, like, how will you remember to do things? A lot of them initially are like, oh, I got it. Steel trap. Like, I can't tell you the number of kids that are like, my mom wants me to use a planner, but I remember. And so we do a little bit of like, this is a big debate with us. Do we let them fail with their autonomous attempt at what they think they can do? And how far will we let them go before they realize, oh my God, I really do need a strategy? Versus us saying, you need a strategy. I'm going to tell you what it is. So we balance that a lot, and it's tricky, right? So one of our favorite tools is pulling up for, especially for quarters, which go really fast. We have the 11 by 17 picture of the quarter with all 10 weeks. And we sort of interview style with the syllabus. All right, you read the assignments, I'll throw them in. We'll color code them. And you can see what I like to call, well, pardon my French, but like the oh shit windows, where it's like, oh my goodness, there's 5 assignments in that week and they're all really big. So helping them see time. That's really, really important. How are you going to see time? Because stuff that's later for an ADHD brain, it's later. This is now, this is later, right? So, like, how can we get your eyeballs more open to later that will sneak quicker than you think it will? So, I think that's a big one. We're checking in via text on something they told us they want to be checked in on. Not like, I love you, parents. I do it too, but not nagging parent style. like helping them assess where they think they might drop a ball the next week because they don't like this thing. It's boring. It's terrible. They hate math class. Whatever they need to assess where they think they're going to need to be checked in on. And then we do exactly what they tell us to do, right? They boss us. And I think that's a big part of it. So I think those are just two sneak peeks, like texting reminders on the thing. They are helping figure out what is important to them and helping them see time. There's a million others, but that's just one small version of it. Yeah.
This has been great. We could probably easily talk for another hour, but I don't want to overstay our welcome here. Thanks to both of you. I'm so sorry Emily wasn't able to join us.
Yeah.
Um, there I have another presentation coming up next month that Emily will be a part of. So folks are welcome to reach out to me at topcollegeconsultants.com to learn more about what I do and other presentations we have. Do you want to say how they can reach you, Cindy and Gwen?
Yeah. Mobile. So we're just at Threshold Coaches with an ES at the end.com. And we get back real quick. So there's a contact us button on that page that comes straight to us. And we'll be back in touch in a couple days. And then if you want to just get going and you're ready to show up and chat with me directly with your student, then we do free consultations that I cannot help but make close to an hour. I'm not supposed to do that with my time, but I do. So come chat with me with your reluctant student and we'll see where we can land. Yeah.
Thanks. And Gwen?
Meaningfulgrowth.com is where you can find my work. And if it's therapy based, I can only work with students in the state of California. But I can do transition assessments, federally compliant transition assessments all over. So,
And for anyone who hasn't
anytime you
been to Gwen's website, Gwen also has a great YouTube channel, a series of interviews with all kinds of people. So check that out too.
Thanks. Thanks for the plug, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks again. And thanks to everyone for joining us.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go.
Okay.
Those
There we go.
last.
I was about to remove people on my
Oh,
own. I
I
was like,
did
I'm
that.
removing you.
Yeah.
Oh, you
No,
did
I,
it?
I
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
did
removing you.
that.
I'm just
Yeah, I was going to do that too. Get
yeah,
out.
those last 10 people or so I took out.
Oh,
I
good,
think
good.
people are in the webinar and they walk out of the room and they don't
Yeah.
know that it's ended. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
if there was a way
exactly.
to take them out in en masse, I would have, but I don't know a way to do that. So.
Yeah.
I think Cindy and I might have been kicked out with the en masse thing. We should have just like been like, okay, meet you back here, like out, come back in. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Cindy, you're like an old pro.
I was going to say the same thing. Like you would never know you hadn't done this
Yeah.
before.
But I'm always afraid I'm going too far because I'm so verbal processing that anyway. Yeah. So thank you. I'm glad. Oh,
That was
yeah.
great.
Hmm.
Good. I'm hoping that was helpful, Eric. That's a good
It
turnout.
was. Yeah. We had, I don't know, well over 30, close to 40, I think. So
Hmm.
out of 100 plus signed up, that's a pretty good turnout.
Hmm.
I did record it. Thankfully, I didn't forget to record it. So I will share the link and everything. So I'm going to say, yeah, this is the first time I've hosted and moderated. So I was a little scattered trying to make sure everything was working properly.
Hmm.
Oh, it was great.
Good. Good.
No. Yep.
Good, good, good. Yay,
Okay.
team.
Well, thank you both.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Hope it helps with your visibility, but the recording I think often gets a lot more lifespan and traction than the live version anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. Thanks,
Okay.
Eric. Thanks
Okay.
for
Yeah.
hosting.
Thank
Bye,
you. Thank
everyone.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.